Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope all of you are enjoying the proceedings so far. So now I would like to welcome our next guest speaker, Mr. Ayham Ismail. Mr. Ayham Ismail has been working with Qatar Red Crescent since 2010. He was the head of disaster management, leading the disaster and response units and supervising the Qatar Red Crescent relief missions worldwide. In 2020, he became the head of planning and studies, leading the development of strategic plans for the relief and international development sector. Mr. Ayham, mic is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Faten. I hope you can hear me and see me.
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Okay, I will try now to share the presentation. So I need your permission, please.
Okay, for hosting, okay.
Okay, we just made you co-host, so you should be able to share now. Okay, we can see your screen. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you in this very special day, talking about refugees. As mentioning by Mr. Khalid Khalifa about the situation and the numbers, we can recognize that the situation, especially for displaced people, is very complicated. Adding to this aspect, I will talk about also the COVID issue. That was a very, very complicated situation, which already dangerous situation. Yes, we have 82 million of displaced people living in very complicated situation. And if we talk about the refugees and COVID, we can see that the situation is very difficult. The world was not able to handle this issue in general, and especially with the most vulnerable people, if we are talking about refugees, migrants, and displaced. Here we can talk that the international guidelines and national programs to curb transmission have not always considered the needs of refugees, and also the economic harms of the pandemic also affect the most poor people. Also, the applications for asylum and resettlement were disrupted by lockdowns, and refugees has been blamed for spreading the SARS-CoV-2. This is the situation where Qatar Red Crescent recognized that with the COVID, the situation will be worse, especially for the IDPs, migrants, and refugees. But the other issue is the vaccine. Everyone talking about the rights of everyone to get the vaccine. But unfortunately, this is not the case. We have been in a situation where the rich people are able to get the vaccine, but not the poor. Most refugees face a double burden of vaccine inequity. 86% of refugees live in low income and middle income, as mentioning also by Khalid. And COVAX was an initiative to help in this issue. But as we have seen a few days ago by the World Report from Lancet, talking that unfortunately COVAX was not able to solve the problem and also to reach their targets. Here we are talking that as for June 14, only 87 million doses of the vaccine has been shipped to 131 countries through COVAX. But the target was 172 million. Why this happened? Because 10 countries have administered 75% of all COVID vaccines in poor countries. Health workers and people which underlying condition cannot access them. Of the 2.1 billion COVID vaccine doses administered worldwide, so COVAX only have been responsible for less than 4%. And this is the situation now. If we are talking that we need to go back to the normal situation, we need to solve the issue of COVID, we need each one to receive and get the vaccine, but this is not the case. The rich people getting the vaccine, the poor people, especially the most vulnerable people who are refugees, they don't. The second also element here was that many of these poor countries have received vaccinated and not prioritizing refugees. For example, in Bangladesh, where 2.5% of the population is fully vaccinated, not a single dose has been administered in Cox's Bazar refugee camp. In this, the world's largest refugee camp, they didn't have a tools, they didn't have a situation, they are the most vulnerable, they are in very dangerous situation, but they didn't receive any doses. This is the situation now. And this is the responsibility not of only for the governments, not only for the organization, it's the responsibility of everyone, because no one will be safe until everyone be safe and get the vaccine. But with the situation now where the rich people, the rich countries get the vaccine for their population, for their nationalism in the vaccine issue, the situation is very dangerous, and the refugees, migrants, and IDPs are the most vulnerable in this issue. Qatar Red Crescent, with cooperation with WHO and another organization, come with the community-based initiative. This initiative called "I Am Vaccinated, I Donated." It's, argue everyone to think about the refugees and to think how we can support the vaccine for refugees and vaccine equity. And this is, again, it's not the responsibility of the governments or the organization. It's the responsibility of the community and everyone. And for this, we came with this initiative to strengthen the protection of refugees, displaced persons, and migrants in the MENA zone by providing COVID vaccinations. The expected result is support of provision the vaccine and also a large-scale campaign to mobilize support to the governmental, institutional, and also individual levels. Public advocacy, this is the important role of the public opinion, how we can also put pressure on the governmental side to support the vaccine equity and leave no one behind, and also the promote and encourage vaccination against COVID-19. Our target is $100 million. We started in April 2021 and will continue for 3 years. As I mentioned, there are also Ministry of Awqaf, Turkish Red Crescent, Kuwaiti Red Crescent, Raqqa, IFRC, ICRC, Oridu, QQ Media, Tumuh, and also other companies and institutions are coming to work with us in this humanitarian initiative. The key message of this campaign, first, is the vaccine equity. We believe that this is the most urgent and dangerous issue. We need to think and work together to support the right of getting COVID vaccine for refugees, IDPs, and migrants, and also leaving no one behind. The community participation to support. Each one now can donate, and not only the fund can come from organization or governmental institution, also individuals can donate to, if you get vaccine, also you can donate to support vaccine in the refugees camps. And also the role of religion in advocating this humanitarian issue. The importance of zakat, because also we get the approval from Ministry of Awqaf to provide COVID vaccine from zakat funds. Also, we get this approval from the religious committee here in Qatar. And this is very important, as mentioned also by Khalid, about the using of zakat in these humanitarian issues, especially the COVID and the COVID vaccination. Also, we talk about the role of sport in advocating the humanitarian issues, the role of public opinion, and also the role of our communities, because yes, we are the region where the largest number of refugees and IDPs and migrants come. So it's also our role to support these global initiatives and efforts talking about the vaccine equity. So this is from our side. This is our initiative, and we need anyone can help us, anyone can work with us, but we believe that the vaccine for refugees is very important and needed, and everyone should work on that. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to receive any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ayham, for your speech and for the impressive innovative of refugees COVID vaccination. Do we have any question, or shall we proceed with our next speaker? So I think we will proceed to present or introduce our next speaker. Please, let's welcome our next speaker, Mr. Fadi Iskandarani from Orphan Care Federation. Mr. Iskandarani is the CEO of Orphan Care Federation, responsible for providing the visionary of leadership while developing the organization's infrastructure, as well as leading the strategic growth. Also, he is the chairman of the Scientific Conference of Orphan Care. The conference aims to make a long-term change-making process in the behavior and culture of individuals, communities, organizations, and bodies, whether donors or implementers. Mr. Iskandarani, floor is yours, please.
Good morning and welcome to everyone here. Thank you very much for hosting me and having me today. And I was asked to talk about empowerment for orphans, refugees, and families. I will try to elaborate as much as I can on the issue. It is like, as a matter of fact, like a large issue. We need a lot of time to talk about. I will see how much I can cover, and if there's any questions after when I finish. If you can allow me to share from, there's a user called Orphan Care Federation. If you allow me to share from that user, please.
Mr. Fadi, do you want to share your screen?
Yes, please.
Okay, I just made you co-host, so you should be able to do that now. Can you please try?
Well, I'm sharing from different computers. So the other one is called Orphan Care Federation.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Let me find it. Okay.
Still not allowing.
Should be available now.
Yes.
Okay, we can see your screen. Perfect.
Yes, nice. And here I want to talk, to be honest, today we are talking about refugees, and today is the day of the refugees. But as a matter of fact, as Mr. Khalid was talking, not many people did talk about IDPs. And IDPs, we're talking about the internally displaced people. So they are actually refugees within their own countries. So they have moved from place A to place B within their own countries. And mostly it is because of natural disasters, wars and conflicts, or some sort of other problems. And those are what we call IDPs, and they are actually in millions as well. And the other who are refugees. Refugees here, when we talk about refugees, we are talking about people who have crossed international borders in the same situation like in Syria. They have flocked into so many countries, especially the neighboring countries. But for Syrian refugees, for example, they are in over 120 countries around the world. For like Palestinian refugees, they are maybe in 170 countries around the world. So this is the situation for them. And the reason I'm talking about this, because later when we need to talk about empowerment, there's a reason. Is empowerment possible for these people, and what is the legal implications for that? And since we are talking about orphans and widows, here I need to talk, to be honest, briefly about orphan from a Muslim perspective, because there is different definition about it in our case. An orphan child from a Muslim perspective, who is a person who has lost his father. Some people take it into a person who has lost his mother, but the father is there. But from a Muslim perspective, it is the person who has lost his father. So, and considerably, the father is the breadwinner of the family. So we are talking about a child who is in need of support. And the mother, in some cases, actually cannot cope to support her family. And we have seen it actually in many cases. And we are talking about the refugee communities that a family of 5 or 7, could be 2 of them are disabled. They have moved from cross borders into another country because of war. And the lady could abandon her children because, to be honest, she cannot cope and care for them. Unfortunately, the situation of orphans is huge around the world. As Mr. Khalid was talking about figures and numbers this morning, the number of refugees, according to UNICEF, they talk about 140 million, and some talk about more. The current figures, which is, to be honest, there isn't not really statistics about it, but we're talking about 155 millions around the world. And for a widow is a lady who has lost her husband. And so he is, as I said, he's the breadwinner. And the number of widows around the world could reach actually hundreds of millions. The statistics talks about 258 millions. For example, the situation in Syria, the war created over 1 million orphans. And so we are talking about at least 300 or 400,000 widows. In situation in Iraq, we're talking about maybe like 1 million widow. Situation in Yemen as well, we talked about maybe 300, 400,000 of widows. And this is actually because of war and conflicts, etc. This map actually shows where those mostly orphans are living around the world. According to the Turkish Red Crescent, they found that 72% of the orphans around the world are actually lives in OIC countries, the 57 countries of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. So we are talking about at least 100 million orphans in the Muslim countries. And unfortunately, as you can see from the map, the north is the wealthy countries where there is, of course, could be orphans or children with no care, but the governments actually provide some sort of social support for them. And the poor countries where the situation is, they could be in their own country, they could be displaced, or they could be refugees. Unfortunately, the care for them is low. And here where there is like a huge need and a huge support is meant to be provided for this community. The current situation, again, when we are talking about orphans and empowering families, we need to talk about the current situation, what the organizations, non-governmental organizations here in particular, we are not talking about children who are actually in the care of the government. We are talking about the children. Those millions actually I have been talking about are majority either receiving no sort of support whatsoever, or they are receiving some sort of support from non-governmental organizations, charity organizations. And here I did call it support. I didn't call it, some people call it, as we say in Arabic, kafala. And kafala is not really, what is currently being provided is not really kafala. Kafala is meant to be that the child receiving a full support from the kafil, from the sponsor. What is currently is being provided is like a financial support for this particular family to be able to survive. And here now we come into the issue. What we are talking about is empowerment. And when we are talking about refugees, and are we able to empower them? This is a big question. And is it possible to empower them? I want to talk about first empowerment. In reality, there is no like a clear definition of what is empowerment and what empowerment could involve. But empowerment like involves so many things. For example, community development, psychological support. And this is a very important issue that actually we have faced within our work in with refugees and with IDPs and with actually orphans and widows in general, that psychological support could be the main support that they need rather than like food or financial support. Education is an important issue for empowerment. Economic empowerment include economic empowerment, include movement studies, and include social organizations and others. And as I said, empowerment is actually could be understood and has several perspectives, and it varies. And when we are talking about empowerment, in reality, we are talking about development. So we are the idea is changing a person's life. And again, when we're talking about development and the concept of development is varies, is actually, and due to multiplicity and diversity of research. The thing is, because when you are talking about development from like a situation, the case where I am now, I'm in London, this is a settled country, economic is, UK is a country in the G7. So when we are talking about development in this country, is completely different approach, it's different perspective when you are talking about providing and development support for an orphan family in northern Syria, or in the Cox's Bazar for the Rohingya refugee in Bangladesh, or actually the situation could be worse for Yemen as well. Yemen is a country surrounded by other countries, which is not really possible people to cross borders. So actually development for them, it is something I'm talking about that we have faced actually in life, that when we need to talk about development for this community, what can we develop, what type of development can we provide for a Yemeni community where transfer of funds is almost impossible, or next to not really able to do it, because there's so many restrictions on actually transferring funds for charitable purposes. But in reality, development is defined as transition from a stage to a better stage. It's moving from a situation that we are in now, that we want to move into a better situation that could be better for the child, for the family, and in principle for the community. So, as I said, development is a process of multiple interrelated factors that affect each other: economic situation, social situation. It could be sometimes a political aspect as well. And here again, we are in a situation, we are talking about refugees, and those refugees, as we said, if they are within their own country, so they are in receiving some sort of care. If they are moved to another country, the current situation they are in, they are either being cared by a country, or they are being cared, which is the majority, by UN agencies, by charitable organizations, non-governmental organizations, local non-governmental organizations. So this is the situation we are in. We want to talk about care and what is the possibility of empowerment. And I will be talking about the current financial sponsorship that is being provided and what development project could be possible and what the programs could accompany the financial sponsorship. The financial sponsorship, which is now a majority of organizations working with orphans and especially refugees. And as a matter of fact, to be honest, some charities actually moved away from providing sponsorship for orphans because actually they are on the move. And in sponsorship within charitable organization, they want to actually to see the development in the child, year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. So some actually, majority of organizations did the work hard to provide support. Some organizations actually preferred not to get involved. And this is an unfortunate situation. But the financial sponsorship that is being provided for the child, it is meant to be a system to create change, support this family. It is aimed at securing at least an adequate standard of life for this family. And it is an essential means of achieving balance and social stability. It is some sort of support for this family to have what we call a decent life. But when we are talking about humanitarian care, in reality, we are talking about a continuous support, like what Mr. Khaled was talking. They are aiming to fundraise from Zakat, and their fundraising from Zakat is increasing from one year to the other. But this is actually when providing support for those refugees and IDPs, it is some sort of a continuous support. So when we're talking about humanitarian continuous support in this manner, we are talking about a permanent drain of financial resources. This is actually where we see that the need of empowerment, how empowerment is so important for those communities. And when we need to talk about the development project, what empowerment could do to them, it is, as we said earlier, development is the growth and elevation of something from one place to the other. Technically, development is a rapid cumulative permanent increase over a period of time. And when I talk about over a period of time, people think that if I contribute $1, I have made a change. And we explain to that particular donor, it must be continuous. And it is something for us who people were aiming for development and we are aiming for empowerment to understand that it is a process. And I actually wanted to talk about it from the butterfly as a model. I don't know how many of you actually are aware of the butterfly life, how a butterfly actually moved into different stages. I have put them here into 4 stages. In reality, each one of them is 2 stages. So egg laying is 2 stages, larva stage, and then each one of them is 2 stages. When we talk about these 8 stages of a butterfly moving from stage 1 into stage 2, how the butterfly actually work on it, she lay a glue on the leaf in order for the eggs to stick on the leaf, and then these eggs are actually over some time, they come out, and it creates a worm, and then from a worm start eating, etc. I will ask you, and if you can answer me on the chat, do you know how much a butterfly, when she come out, how much time does it take in order for her to be able to fly? If you can just answer me quickly on the chat, I would appreciate it. No answer. Can somebody contribute? Is it minutes? 40 what? 40 minutes, 40 hours, 40 days? Can someone tell me how much time butterfly needs for? 40 days. Anybody else? It is a bit too much, to be honest, 40 days. She may not survive for 40 days to fly. Okay. I will tell you because I cannot see much contribution from our participants here.
7
The
days.
situation.
We have one more who said 7 days. Maybe it needs 7 days.
He said how many?
7 days.
7 days. No. The situation for a butterfly, she spent 8 hours pumping blood into the wing in order for her to fly. So the example I'm trying to talk here, that if we need to talk about empowerment, development, we need to talk about time and contribution and investment into this for a project to be successful and to be able to empower those communities. Again, when we are talking about empowerment, we want to launch an empowerment project, a development project. Is it possible to do this sort of project with a moving community? We are talking about people. I'm telling you about a situation that we have seen it actually by our bare eyes, that we are talking about a community who is today in northern Syria, in Idlib, for example. Tomorrow they are by the border of Halab, and about a community who are in Ma'rib in Yemen, and the next day they are in a different city in Yemen, and this is the situation. So when we are talking about an empowering moving community, is it possible? And some people might say, no, it is not possible. But from our experience, we can say, yes, it is possible, because I believe coronavirus pandemic is a big example for all of us, how we all did work and cope with it. The idea when we are talking about empowerment, this is the situation that we need for those communities. They are in a community of need, and I'm telling you, a community of need is, I'm not trying like to disrespect those people. No, as a matter of fact, we are talking about people who they might have been in their country of well-being. We have seen it like some business people who have lost everything and they have fled from their country to another country, and they were successful, but they were able to be successful, to be honest, with the idea of empowering them, supporting them. So this is what we actually want to do with those communities. This is what we are actually need to work with those communities, is to create a culture of empowerment in order for them to move from the culture of need into the culture of empowerment. And as I said, when we are talking about the culture of care, on providing care versus empowerment, care, we said about draining our financial resources, and empowerment is actually building on these resources for those communities to move from being a receiver into a community of being a provider. Excuse me, I actually suffer from hay fever, which affects a little bit. It caused me some sort of asthma. And this is a big question, and this is what we have actually faced in our situation in the charitable sector. We want to talk about relief. Yes, donors will come and support. We want to talk about providing food basket. Yes, the donor will come and support. We want to talk about orphan sponsorship. Yes, the donor will support, because when we talk about orphan sponsorship, we talk maybe like $30 per month, $50 per month, $100 per month. But when we're talking about empowerment, we might be talking about a $2,000 or $5,000 for a particular family to provide them in one-off. Is it that possible to be provided? This is the question. So we are in a situation. Does the donor accept to move from like a relief culture into a development culture? And this is a big challenge for charitable organizations. How can we move this? Because if we said, yes, we can move it, are we as charitable organizations, are we aiming to involve in empowerment, able to do that, or do we need some sort of help and support? And as I said earlier, can we start some sort of development for IDPs? As a matter of fact, yes, we can. I have seen it, to be honest, by my bare eyes in like a situation like Kosovo, when the country just came out of the war. And some actually charitable organizations, I have seen them like providing some sort of support for some people to provide a car wash. At that time, the country was under war, and I was telling myself, who actually in need to wash his car? But that project was actually successful. And another person who is like in northern Syria, he wanted to provide some sort of help. Not really help, some sort of a business for mobile phones, for people using mobile phones. And it was also successful. That project maybe cost $700 or $1,000. So instead of us, rather than giving them $50 per month, and maybe we gave them $1,000 in order for them to move. The other situation is, what is the role of the organization within empowerment? And this is actually a big dilemma, because sometimes we think that if we are providing this sort of empowerment, we want to control them. We want to tell them what to do from A to Z all the time. And this is actually a big issue, because when we are talking about empowerment, we are talking about making them leading on their life, making them leading on their families, and making them to be leaders and entrepreneurs within their community and within their society. And as I said earlier, can the relief organization develop development work? Yes, they can. The idea is they might need some sort of help, and they might need some sort, again, to apply the butterfly, that it is a process. It is not something that we want to do tomorrow, and we are now in June, and it has to develop in July. The big question and the big now dilemma, the big issue is legal implications. The situation is, when we talk about IDPs, we're talking about the people who have moved within their own country. So they are citizens in their country. There's no legal implication for them. They can find a job, they can pay taxes, they cannot pay taxes, there's so many things which they may not have any illegal implications. But when we are talking about the situation for refugees, in 3.5 million refugees, Syrian in Turkey, the current situation for them is actually, you have to apply for a work permit to work. In most of the cases, the government is refusing the work permit. They cannot actually really work. So the only option is for them to work illegally. And this is what is going on. So in same situation in Lebanon, actually. But when we talk about Jordan previously allowed Syrian to work in it. And this is the problem. When we are talking about refugees like going into Europe, the situation is completely different. The government provides them with some sort of financial support until they are settled, and they are given actually a work permit in order for them to work. So the legal implications for refugees to work in a different country is a very, very sophisticated. I think it is a matter that maybe UN agencies, because we as charities, we may not have like the real power on governments to change the legal system, but maybe when we are talking about UN agencies, I know they are not the decision makers, but at least maybe their work with governments could be completely different from our work. And as Mr. Khalid said, we are talking about 82 million people of refugees around the world. Those 82 million people, I'm pretty sure most of the UN agencies, charitable organizations, NGOs, humanitarian, whatever you want to call it, they cannot cater for all this number of people. So these people need to find a way of work in order for them to be able to lead on their life. And for them to be able to lead on their life, this is where actually lie our responsibility in order for them to provide this sort of empowerment for them to lead. And here I'm talking about the change. This is, I live within the charitable sector, and this is the situation within the charitable sector that we always have to think about. How can we change ourselves in order to provide changes? As I said earlier, how can we change a donor understanding from providing relief work into providing an empowerment and support work? How can we change the idea of only providing some sort of food support into like a psychosocial support? Unfortunately, most of the people goes into, yes, I want to sponsor, I want to do qurbani, I want to provide food, but when we talk to them about psychosocial support, they might like feel, oh, sorry, I cannot do it. I prefer to go into the other means, which is non-food security. Change is important. Change actually create a positive. Ignoring change, the situation like we all now talked about change. People come to me and say, Fadi, no, it is not possible to change. I give them a very simple example. 25 years ago, we did not have not everybody did have a mobile phone. After that mobile phone came into our life, everybody started using a mobile phone. Now everybody has a smartphone. It's like a mini laptop in our hands. Everybody is using. If we were able to change from Nokia in 15 years or 20 years ago into BlackBerry, into now Samsung and iPhone, I believe we can change and we can do a lot. If we were hit with the coronavirus pandemic and we were not all of us were ready for it. We are one of the organization, actually, when the pandemic hit, we didn't know what to do, to be honest. Only we said one thing to ourselves: we will not let it break us, and we are going to use it, to utilize it in order to move forward. For organizations, when Corona hit, we were like a number of 6 employees. When today we are talking about, we are a number of 14 employees, and we have 4 offices around the world. So this is when we are talking about change. This is what you can create in a situation with the refugees. We cannot say that because of war and or because they have moved into another country, we cannot do anything. Yes, we can do. Yes, we can empower, and yes, we can provide them with some sort of support. A very important issue this morning, Mrs. Sangira was talking about women. I am also one of the advocates about women. Women are a very important member of the society. They are sisters, they are our mothers, etc. So if we don't empower them, if we don't actually get all the benefit from them in order for them to lead on the change as well, we are losing a lot. And this is one of the actually programs we have done, empowering pioneer women. And what we have seen actually in this, when we developed this program, supporting the woman into psychological support, psychosocial support. The woman came to me and she said, you know, Fadi, this program is very much important to me than the food basket I was provided. Now I feel I am human. From day one, they came to me and they were providing me with food basket, with support, with the sponsorship for my children. But today I don't want anything from them. Nobody actually came to me and explained to me this. I was actually down, I was depressed. And last week we had a meeting with Palestinian organizations. Number one, what they asked, they are not asking about actually building their houses, although they did ask it, but it was number two. Number one, what they were asking about was actually a psychological support, because for people living in Gaza or people living in the West Bank, this is the sort of support actually they want. All what actually majority of us go into these people, and we want to provide them with some sort of food security, etc. But if we provide them on leading on their own life, they're actually, we are providing a full community, a full society actually. The other ideas of empowerment, which now we go into like creating life for these people, is this is the program I was talking about. The other thing, maybe charitable organization can think about creating some waqf project, because we have seen it, so many people, they have the skills, but they don't know where can they can produce some materials, but they don't know where to sell it. How can they sell it? Maybe charitable organizations can create this, some sort of projects. I have seen this, some successful projects actually, like from Yemen. The other thing is also microcredit. We have seen some ladies who they said, actually, I can do the work myself. All what I need is to teach me how can I manage my business. And this is also a very important. What I'm showing you is actually some samples. This is not the only possible. The ideas are unlimited, but this is some samples I thought about. And as I said earlier, we are talking about these people, moving them from like a recipient into to be a producer, to be a donor. The other thing is actually, when we are talking about we want to empower those community, we need to start within ourselves. We need like to train our people. How can they do it? And in our case, to be honest, we have found that the most important person are the lady, who we call her like the caregiver or the field worker, who is the link between the family, the orphans, and the mother, as well as the charitable organization. So this person has to receive some sort of a proper training in order for him or her to lead on their job, the job that they want to do, and the job, how can they do this job, and how can they support these families. So this is very important. The other thing is actually the child themselves. If they are in a camp, in a tent, it doesn't mean that they cannot do anything. We have to do to provide them with some extracurricular activities. And we need to utilize, to be honest, in here, I am from Scout background. In Scout, we talk about learning by doing. And this is also the same, which is with social entrepreneurship. The social entrepreneurship is based on learning by doing. Like, for example, a project wanted to be launched in a camp in Jordan, and the project was for like $20,000, and the people were running right and left in order for them to fundraise to provide the project, until some person from that camp came to them and he said, I am from sport background and you want to do a sport project. I can tell you what we can do, and instead of $20,000, we only need $1,000. And actually, his interference into the project was actually successful. They were able to provide a better, more project when utilizing this particular person, when providing extracurricular activities to these people, because this actually will build their personality for the future. The most important issue, I know somebody later on will talk today about education. Education is a very important, very essential. Providing education for refugees is to be honest, education is the core of life. The situation now for Syria, we are talking about millions of children out of education. And this is, to be honest, very essential. So I believe maybe UN agencies, everybody trying to provide some sort of support. If we provided some shelter and we provided some bread for these people, I believe the next thing that we have to provide them is education, because education can build communities and build societies. And I believe everybody must take it into consideration. How can we utilize volunteers in order to provide education for these displaced communities? Again, the psychological support, what we heard it and what we keep hearing it, what I want actually is psychological support. I don't need food. How can I eat food if I don't have the appetite? How can I lead on my family if I cannot have the support to make me able to be a human and that I want to live? Because to be honest, what we have seen with so many ladies, especially we're talking about widows, some ladies abandoned their children. We have seen it. Some ladies actually wanted to commit suicide. Some ladies actually did not understand, because let's think about it. In a normal situation, in a normal life, if a lady lose her husband, she will be in psychological shock. So what would be the situation when we are talking about a refugee lady in the middle of the nowhere, maybe sitting under the tree and thinking about herself? So number one, support for her, I believe, should be some psychological, psychosocial support. I am almost done. If I believe I need to leave some time if there is any questions, but I can just tell you, as they say, this is not my saying. If you want to plant for a year, plant wheat. If you want to plant for 10 years, plant a tree. And if you want to plant for 100 years or for the future, we need to invest in a human being. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Skandarani, for your critical insights and interesting presentation. We'd like to check if we have any question from our audience. Please, those who have any question, you could raise your hand. Otherwise, we will proceed with our next speaker.
I can't see anybody raising their hands, and I actually tried to summarize because I did see Mr. Khalid took extra time, so I thought maybe I'll sacrifice some of my time. I can't see anything in the chat, and I can't see anybody raising their hands.
Well, let's proceed with our next speaker. So now I would like to play our next speaker's recorded presentation, Mrs. Majda Kurbaji from Basamat for Development Organization. Mrs. Majd has first started working in humanitarian crisis at the beginning of her 18 years in South Sudan. Since then, she has worked extensively on Syrian refugee crisis. Please, Bayan, could you assist in playing Mrs. Majd's presentation on screen?
Can you hear the video?
Yeah, I can see it. I can see it on screen.
But can you hear it?
Not it. Play it, please.
No, right?
No.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Let me try again. There we go. Should work now.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. من هنا من إسطنبول بداية أريد أن أوجه الشكر الكبير لكلية الدراسات الإسلامية في جامعة حمد بن خليفة في قطر على إتاحة الفرصة الرائعة لنا لأكون بينكم وأتكلم في هذا اليوم يوم اللاجئ العالمي لعام 2021. تحية طيبة ومباركة لكم جميعا، وتحية لكل لاجئ في هذا العالم عموما، وإلى كل لاجئ سوري خصوصا. أحيي نفسي كلاجئة، وأحيي اللاجئين السوريين لاحتلالنا المرتبة الأولى بين الدول المصدرة للاجئين للأسف. تحية إلى اللاجئين الذين يدفعون منذ 10 سنوات ضريبة الحرب الدامية في سوريا، الذين اختاروا الرحيل من بلادهم هربا من الموت، من القمع، من الاضطهاد، من الظلم، من الاعتقال. هؤلاء الذين تركوا حياتهم ليبدأوا حياة جديدة رغما عنهم وعن إرادتهم في بلدان جديدة. هجرت الحرب السورية نصف سكانها ما بين نزوح داخلي ونزوح خارجي، وفتحت الدول المجاورة أبوابها للسوريين بكل رحابة صدر، لا سيما لبنان، تركيا، مصر، الأردن، العراق، امتدادا إلى أوروبا وكندا وباقي الدول، لتلبية تلك الحاجة الإنسانية الكبيرة. وما زالت تشكل مسألة تربية الأطفال وتعليم الأطفال اللاجئين مصدر قلق بشكل خاص لجميع هذه الدول، نظراً لأهميتها على صعيد مستقبل المجتمع السوري وعلى صعيد المجتمعات البلدان المضيفة. سأعرض لكم الآن فيديو مدته 6 دقائق يحمل الكثير من الرسائل الصامتة عملنا عليه نحن في مؤسسة بصمات من أجل التنمية، من أجل عرضه عليكم في هذا اليوم. نظراً لضيق الوقت المحدد سأنتقل للحديث بداية عن بصمات مؤسسة بصمات من أجل التنمية، وبعدها عن أهم التحديات تعليم اللاجئين السوريين في أوقات النزاع، وبعدها أركز على نموذج تعليم الأطفال السوريين في لبنان كنموذج. بداية سأتكلم عن مؤسسة بصمات من أجل التنمية. مؤسسة غير ربحية تأسست عام 2014 في لبنان، وهي حالياً متواجدة في لبنان وسوريا وتركيا. مؤسسة بصمات تعمل على عملها يتركز على تعليم الأطفال من خلال افتتاح مدارس ومراكز تعليمية، وعلى تدريب وتمكين النساء السوريات أيضاً من خلال افتتاح العديد من المراكز التدريب والمراكز المهنية لتمكين النساء اللاجئات السوريات، وخصوصاً الفاقدات للمعيل الذين يعني تضرروا من الحرب في سوريا، واللاتي أصبحوا معيلات لأسرهم في لبنان وفي تركيا وفي سوريا. مؤسسة بصمات قامت بتأسيس مدرسة في لبنان عام 2014. هذه المدرسة بدأت ب500 طالب في عامها الأول، وحالياً وصل أعداد الطلاب في مدرسة العالم الصغير إلى 1200 طالب، من بينهم أكثر من 200 يتيم. مؤسسة بصمات لم تقبل حقيقة ببداية تأسيس مدرسة العالم الصغير أن تستخدم يعني أسلوب التعليم المؤقت أو التعليم البديل، والذي استخدمه الكثير من المؤسسات الخيرية، وهو تعليم الأطفال داخل المخيمات وداخل الخيم. نحن بالعكس يعني كان هدفنا نأسس مدرسة بمبنى نموذجي بمواصفات تليق بالطفل، يشعر أنه هو عم يتلقى تعليمه بكل كرامة وجدية. فكانت مدرسة بصمات هي الأولى من هذا النوع في البقاع اللبناني، والحمد لله كانت نموذجاً لكي يتم افتتاح مدارس مشابهة لها فيما بعد من عدة مؤسسات سورية أخرى. حالياً يعني ما زالت المدرسة موجودة، نقوم بتخريج سنوياً أكثر من 80-90 طالب وطالبة يدخلون الجامعات بعدة مجالات مختلفة، منها الطب، الصيدلة، الهندسة، الحقوق، المواد الإنسانية. الحمد لله كانت المدرسة يعني هي مكان أمل للكثير من الطلاب السوريين الذين انقطعوا عن التعليم بسبب الحرب، ليس فقط من أجل الأطفال. حتى مدرسة العالم الصغير خصصت صف في المدرسة من أجل استقبال الأمهات والنساء الذين انقطعوا عن التعليم أكثر من 10-15 عام، الذين لم تتح لهم الفرصة في سوريا أن يكملوا تعليمهم ويأخذوا البكالوريا التوجيهي ويكملوا دراسة الجامعة. ففتحنا أيضاً أبوابنا للنساء الراغبات ضمن يعني رؤيتنا بتمكين النساء السوريات. فتحنا أبواب مدرستنا للنساء الراغبات بتكميل تعليمهم، ومنهم من تخرج من المدرسة ودرس الجامعة وتوظف في المدرسة أيضاً ليكون نموذجاً للعديد من السيدات وتشجيعهم حتى يكملوا تعليمهم في مدرستنا. طبعاً رغم كثير من المعوقات والتحديات التي عانت منها مؤسسة بصمات في لبنان بسبب التضييق الحاصل من الحكومة اللبنانية على الكثير من المؤسسات والجمعيات السورية المحلية الموجودة في لبنان، وحيث يعني تم إغلاق مدرستنا أكثر من مرتين ولأسباب حقيقة يعني غير واضحة، يعني أسباب التضييق وأسباب العنصرية الموجودة من الحكومة اللبنانية تجاه اللاجئين السوريين. رغم كل هذا الشيء ولكن ما زلنا يعني مستمرين وبقينا صامدين حتى هذه اللحظة، وإن شاء الله سنبقى أيضا يعني حتى عودة جميع الأطفال وجميع اللاجئين إلى بلادهم آمنين. بحب يعني أتشكر الشعب اللبناني اللي هو فتح أبواب رغم كل الظروف السيئة اللي هو عم يعاني منها في بلده، ولكن يعني فتحوا أبوابهم لنا. قبل ما أتكلم عن الكثير من التحديات والظروف الصعبة اللي عانينا منها من الحكومة اللبنانية وليس من الشعب اللبناني، بهمني أوضح هذه النقطة منعاً لأي يعني سوء فهم بالكلام اللي أنا حالياً رح أتكلم فيه. للأسف العملية التعليمية في لبنان يعني عانينا نحن كسوريين من عدة أمور كلاجئين كانت مختلفة جدا عن العملية التعليمية والسياسة التي تبعتها الحكومة التركية مع موضوع التعليم اللاجئين في تركيا السوريين في تركيا. في لبنان ما تم دمج الطلاب السوريين مع الطلاب اللبنانيين في المدارس الحكومية، وإنما اتبعت الحكومة سياسة إنه الدوام ما بعد دوام الطلاب اللبنانيين تم إدخال الطلاب السوريين بفترة بعد الظهر بدوام خاص فيهم لإلهم دون دمجهم مع الطلاب اللبنانيين. وهذا الشيء يعني كان سيء حقيقة، وغير يعني ما جعل الطلاب يندمجوا بالمجتمع اللبناني ويندمجوا بالمدارس اللبنانية. وما استخدمت الحكومة اللبنانية للأسف، يعني أبعدت المعلم السوري عن العملية التعليمية في لبنان، فما كان له المعلم السوري لم يكن له أي دور بالعملية التعليمية في لبنان كما عملت تركيا، إنما دمجت المعلمين السوريين في العملية التعليمية في تركيا وقامت بتجنيسهم، فصار في عملية دمج كامل ما بين الطلاب السوريين مع الطلاب الأتراك، المعلمين السوريين مع المعلمين الأتراك، فأصبحوا جزء، يعني الطلاب السوريين أصبحوا جزء من العملية التعليمية في تركيا، ولم يعودوا يشعروا بأنفسهم أنهم لاجئين في تركيا. وإنما في لبنان للأسف يعني على مدار 10 سنوات ولم نستطع أن نتجاوز هذه المشكلة. بقي الطلاب السوريين يذهبون إلى المدارس الحكومية في بعد الدوام الطلاب اللبنانيين، ولم يتلقوا تعليمهم كتعليم رسمي، وإنما كان نوع من أنواع التعليم البديل عن طريق اليو إن، عن طريق الأمم المتحدة، وهو فقط يعطيهم تعليم مثلا الرياضيات، الموسيقى، اللغة، وليس تعليم يعني نظامي رسمي يستطيعون من خلاله أن يكملوا يعني مسيرتهم التعليمية حتى يدخلوا الجامعات، وإنما كان هو نوع من أنواع التعليم البديل. الحلول الأخرى اللي كانت موجودة بالنسبة للاجئين السوريين في حال لا يريدون تسجيل يعني في المدارس الحكومية، هي كانت المدارس الخاصة اللبنانية، وطبعا كانت مستحيلة بالنسبة للاجئ السوري بسبب التكاليف العالية للمدارس الخاصة. فيعني نسبة قليلة جدا لا تتجاوز أتخيل نصف المئة التي استطاعت أن تسجل أولادها في المدارس الخاصة. فكان الخيار الثالث هو خيار المدارس التي تم افتتاحها من المنظمات المدنية ومنظمات المجتمع المحلي، المنظمات السورية، يلي كانت هي يعني خيار بديل عن المدارس الحكومية اللبنانية. طبعا بهذه المدارس التي افتتحتها المنظمات ومنها نحن من دراستنا مدرسة العالم الصغير، كان المعلم السوري هو الجزء يعني هو الأساسي في العملية التعليمية، فكان الطفل يشعر يعني بحاضنة له في هذه المدارس أكثر من المدارس الحكومية اللي تعرض فيها الكثير من العنصرية، الكثير من التنمر، الكثير من الاضطهاد، وتم تسجيل الكثير من الانتهاكات لطلاب سوريين في المدارس الحكومية اللبنانية من المعلمين اللبنانيين أو من الإدارات. الطفل السوري يعني في المدارس اللي تم افتتاحها من منظمات المجتمع المدني كان عم يتلقى التعليم بشكل كامل، تعليم رسمي، كان عم يشعر بارتياح، حتى في ارتياح من الأهل بالتعامل مع إدارات هذه المدارس، على اعتبار أنه هن القائمين عليها هن من اللاجئين من المجتمع السوري، ومن اللي عم يعانوا عندهم نفس معاناة الأطفال. فكان في يعني نوع من الثقة المتبادلة ما بين الأطفال وما بين القائمين على هذه المدارس، ما بين الأهل وما بين القائمين على هذه المدارس. لكن مشكلة هذه المدارس حقيقة هي كانت الاعترافات الرسمية من التربية اللبنانية التي لم تحصل عليها للأسف. كل المدارس هذه ما حصلت على هذه الاعترافات رغم الجهود الكبيرة والضغوطات الكبيرة من هذه المنظمات على أن يتم الاعتراف بها من التربية اللبنانية حتى يستطيع الأطفال أخذ إفادات رسمية حتى يقدروا يكملوا تعليمهم، يكملوا جامعاتهم. ولكن كان في رفض قطعي يعني من الحكومة، من التربية اللبنانية على الاعتراف بهذه المدارس، حتى ما كانوا عم يقوموا بتسكير هذه المدارس وعدم تقديم بديل، يعني مجرد إغلاق المدارس ووضع الأطفال في الشوارع وعدم تقديم بديل عن هذه المدارس التي تم افتتاحها من المنظمات السورية. طبعا يعني نحن كمدرسة لجأنا لطرق حتى نقدر نحن نعترف بمدرستنا، ولكن بطرق بصراحة كانت يعني هي إنه قدرنا نحن نحصل لهم إفادات رسمية عن طريق مدارس أخرى لبنانية، ولكن كانوا موجودين داخل مدرستنا. هن كانوا عم يتلقوا التعليم داخل مدرستنا، ولكن قدرنا نحن نحصل لهم على إفادات رسمية من مدارس أخرى. هي كانت أحد الطرق اللي اتبعناها لحتى نحن يكون الطلاب عم يكون تعليمهم نظامي 100% وموثق يعني، ويكون لهم أسماء داخل لوائح التربية. طبعاً بدي ركز على موضوع هو إنه مو كل الأطفال كان، حتى يعني الأطفال يلي في عنا يعني عائق كتير كبير بموضوع حصول الطفل على إفادة رسمية من التربية اللبنانية، أو حتى السماح له بتقديم إن كان شهادة البروفيه التاسع أو إن كان شهادة التوجيه البكالوريا. هو موضوع الحصول على الأوراق الرسمية داخل الأراضي اللبنانية. أكثر من 90% من اللاجئين السوريين هم ما عندهم إقامات داخل لبنان، وهم يعني موجودين بلبنان بطريقة غير شرعية، وبالتالي الحكومة اللبنانية التربية اللبنانية ما بتسمح لهم أنه هن يقدموا امتحانات رسمية إذا ما كانوا حاصلين على إقامة رسمية في لبنان، ويعني أوراقهم الثبوتية نظامية في لبنان. للأسف هذا الشيء ما كان عم يتم، لأنه الأمن العام اللبناني بالمقابل ما عم يعطي إقامات للسوريين في لبنان، وبالتالي أو عم يوضع يعني شروط تعجيزية لحصولهم على إقامات. فهي كانت أحد المشاكل الكبيرة جدا للطلاب السوريين. طبعا كان في أحد الحلول يلي يعني تم تنفيذه بعام 2014 2015 2016، اللي هو إنه كانوا الطلاب السوريين عم يقدموا امتحاناتهم عن طريق الحكومة السورية المؤقتة، عن طريق وزارة التعليم والتربية في الحكومة السورية المؤقتة. ولكن للأسف الشهادة اللي كان عم يأخذها يعني الطالب لم تكن تخوله أنه يقدر يدخل على أي جامعة لبنانية، لأنه هي غير معترف فيها هذه الشهادة داخل الأراضي اللبنانية فقط. كان معترف فيها في ألمانيا، معترف فيها في فرنسا، معترف فيها في تركيا. شهادة البكالوريا الناتجة عن يعني الصادرة عن الحكومة السورية المؤقتة اللي هي يعني الحكومة البديلة لحكومة النظام، كان معترف فيها بأغلب دول العالم، إلا في لبنان لأسباب سياسية هي غير معترف فيها. فكانت أيضا هذا الحل يعني لم يكن مجديا للطلاب السوريين في لبنان. مؤخرا يعني آخر حوالي 4 سنوات كان في أحد الحلول يلي هو إنه التربية في سوريا في دمشق سوريا النظام، هي يعني سمحت للطلاب السوريين أن يتقدموا بالامتحانات في الأراضي اللبنانية ويأخذوا يعني إفادة رسمية من الحكومة السورية. فهي كان أحد الحلول يعني بصراحة اللي يعني أحد الحلول المجدية والمفيدة للطلاب في لبنان، اللي خلتهم إنه يقدروا هم يقدموا يتقدموا للجامعات بعد ما ينتهوا من مرحلة البكالوريا والتوجيهي، ويحصلوا على شهادات رسمية معترف فيها داخل الأراضي اللبنانية وخارج أيضا الأراضي اللبنانية. وطبعا في بعض الطلاب اللي عنا نحن بيدرسوا كامل العام عنا في مدارس العالم الصغير، اللي يعني بدهم يتقدموا للفروع العلمية وبيذهبوا بوقت الامتحانات فقط إلى دمشق، بيقدموا الامتحانات في دمشق للفروع العلمية، وبيرجعوا بيسجلوا في لبنان بالجامعات اللبنانية. صحيح يعني هي عم نحكي عن جزء من التحديات والصعوبات اللي عانينا منها في لبنان. حقيقة أنا ما بقدر غير أقول أي أحد لما زال عم يستمر بالعمل في لبنان من المنظمات المجتمع المدني، إلا أنه هو بصراحة يعني عم يجاهدوا. حقيقة نحن عم نجاهد بالاستمرار في لبنان، لأنه الظروف والمعوقات غير طبيعية. وأنا خرجت أكثر من مرة إلى جنيف، إلى بروكسل، إلى مؤتمرات يعني تخص اللاجئين، وتكلمنا كثيرا عن مشكلة لبنان، وتكلمنا كثيرا عن المعوقات يعني اللي عم يعاني منها الطفل السوري والطالب السوري في لبنان. وطلبنا يعني الدعم يعني بحيث انه يضغطوا على الحكومه اللبنانيه لتسيير امور يعني اللاجئين، وتسيير امور الطلاب، تسيير امور اقاماتهم، ولكن دون جدوى حتى هذه اللحظه للاسف. هذا وضع اللاجئين يعني بشكل عام في لبنان، وضع الطالب يعني اللاجئ في لبنان. ولكن رغم كل يعني هذه التحديات الحمد لله ما زلنا مستمرين، ما زلنا سنويا أعداد طلابنا عم تزيد، سنويا عندنا طلاب عم تتخرج وتدخل الجامعات رغم كل هي التحديات اللي عم نعاني منها، ورح نضل مستمرين لحتى يرجعوا طلابنا إلى سوريا آمنين إن شاء الله. أخيراً بدي نوه على سياسات التمويل، وإنه ما عم يكون في تمويل بشكل إنساني بحت، وإن دائماً سياسات التمويل عم تكون مرتبطة بالأزمة السورية وبالصراع الدولي الموجود داخل سوريا وبمصالح الدول المتواجدة داخل الأراضي السورية. فدائماً عم يكون التمويل مرتبط بهذا الشيء. أولاً التمويل هو عم يكون في شح بالتمويل سنة بعد سنة بسبب طول الأزمة. نحن الآن مر 10 سنوات على بداية الثورة السورية. التمويل عم يكون مرتبط بالكثير من الأجندات التابعة للدول اللي هي عم تقدم هذا التمويل، وهذا الشيء يعني عم يكون له أثر سلبي جدا على تعليم الأطفال إن كان في الداخل السوري أو الأطفال اللاجئين في لبنان. نحن مدرسة كان عندنا مدرسة في إدلب في الداخل السوري في الشمال السوري. عانينا يعني من تمويل هذه المدرسة بسبب أن الكثير من المنظمات امتنعت عن التمويل داخل السوري خوفاً من موضوع تهمة الإرهاب. أيضاً في لبنان من عامين نحن في لبنان عم نعاني من موضوع التمويل بسبب الأزمة المالية الموجودة في لبنان وأزمة البنوك الموجودة في لبنان. فأيضاً امتنعت الكثير من المنظمات والكثير من الدول على تقديم المعونة إلى يعني للاجئين في لبنان بسبب صعوبة إيصال الأموال عن طريق البنوك اللبنانية. بختتم يعني كلامي حالياً عما يخص اللاجئين السوريين والتعليم. بتمنى حقيقة يعني العام القادم تكون إذا تم استضافتنا تكون الظروف أفضل، ظروف اللاجئين أفضل، تكون اللاجئين رجعوا إلى يعني بلادهم آمنين. بتشكر مرة ثانية جامعة حمد بن خليفة على استضافتنا وعلى إعطائنا هذا المنبر لنقدر نوصل صوتنا، لنقدر نوصل آلامنا، لنقدر نوصل صوت اللاجئين. وبتمنى يعني يوصل الصوت، وبتمنى من أي جهة موجودة حالياً وعم تسمعنا فقط طلب واحد: اسمعونا وعرفوا تماماً نحن شو بدنا ونحن شو محتاجين، بعيداً عن أي سياسات وبعيداً عن أي أجندات. تعاملوا مع السوري على أنه هو إنسان له يعني تم اضطهاده وتم ظلمه، وإنه هو عم يسعى ضمن كل يعني كل هي البشاعة الموجودة في حواليه. هو عم يسعى دائما إنه يقدر يبحث عن بصيص أمل يقدر يكمل ويواصل المسير ويواصل طريقه. وشكرا كثير لكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
We would really like to thank Mrs. Majd for her presentation that tackled the challenges that face most of the Syrian refugees in Lebanon, especially in terms of education process. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to have our second break for our event. Please note that we will carry on at 2:30 p.m. to find out more on refugees issue. I know it's a bit longer, but it's supposed to be enough for praying, stretching, as well as having your lunch. So see you after the break at 2:30 p.m.